Close your eyes for a moment. Can you still smell the faint, sweet scent of a freshly mimeographed schoolwork sheet? Can you hear the rhythmic thunk-clack of a heavy glass milk bottle being set on your porch at dawn? If you grew up in the 1960s, you weren't just living through a decade, you were living through the last era of true, unmonitored childhood freedom. We were the generation that drank from garden hoses, rode bikes without helmets until the streetlights came on, and watched the world change from black and white to Technicolor right before our eyes. But among the peace signs and the moon landing, there are 18 specific things, traditions, objects, and rules that defined us. Things that today's kids would find absolutely impossible to believe. Stay with me because number 4 is a secret tradition we all shared that has completely vanished from the face of the earth. And number 1? Well, that's the one memory that still brings a tear to every boomer's eye. Let's go back to a time when the world was big, the cars were heavy, and we were just kids in the best decade ever.
The 18 unforgettable memories. Let's start with the ultimate ritual. In the 1960s, cartoons weren't a 24/7 commodity. There was no YouTube, no Netflix, and certainly no DVR. If you missed the Bugs Bunny show at 9 a.m. on Saturday, it was gone, into the ether forever. Do you remember waking up at 6 a.m.? The house was silent, the floorboards were freezing, but you didn't care. You crept into the living room, turned that heavy clicking dial on the TV, and waited. You waited for that tiny white dot in the center of the screen to expand into a world of color, or for many of us, shades of gray. We sat there in our flannel pajamas, bowls of cereal like Sugar Smacks or Cap'n Crunch in hand, cereal that probably had enough sugar to power a Saturn V rocket. This was the only time that television belonged to us. No news, no soap operas, no cigarette commercials, just pure, unadulterated joy. It was our weekly reward for surviving another 5 days of school. The rotary phone, a lesson in patience. Can you imagine explaining a rotary phone to a teenager today? No, honey, you don't tap it. You have to earn that phone call. The phone was usually a permanent fixture, bolted to the kitchen wall with a coiled cord that could stretch across 3 rooms if you pulled hard enough. If your best friend had a 9 or a 0 in their phone number, calling them was a physical workout. You'd pull the dial, wait for it to slowly zzz, click, spin back, and then do it again. And then there was the party line. Do you remember picking up the receiver to call your crush, only to hear Mrs. Higgins from down the street gossiping about the Sunday bake sale? You had to quietly click the receiver down and wait your turn. It taught us patience and the art of eavesdropping, 2 skills that defined a 60s childhood. The milkman and the morning clink. Long before grocery delivery apps, there was the milkman. There was something incredibly comforting about waking up to the sound of those glass bottles clinking in the metal carrier on your porch. The milk was fresh, often with a thick layer of cream at the top that you had to shake or stir. We'd leave our empty glass bottles out like a silent exchange of goods. In the winter, if it was cold enough, the milk would freeze and push the little foil cap up like a tiny silver top hat. It was a simpler time when you trusted the person coming onto your porch at 4 a.m.
The streetlight rule. The vanished freedom. I promised you a look at a tradition that has vanished. In the 60s, we had a secret rule that every parent followed without ever discussing it. It was the streetlight rule. From the ages of 5 to 15, your parents didn't know exactly where you were for about 8 hours a day. We would disappear into the woods, the creek, or the vacant lot down the street. We were building precarious forts, playing army, and learning how to negotiate with the big kids without adult interference. But the moment those orange streetlights flickered to life, that was the universal signal.
It didn't matter if you were in the middle of a game of kick the can or just about to win a bike race, you ran. You ran as fast as your PF Flyers could carry you. Because if you weren't through that front door within 5 minutes of the lights coming on, the consequences were legendary. Today, children are tracked by GPS and air tags. Back then, we were tracked by the sun and the hum of electricity. The smell of mimeograph paper. If I say the word mimeograph, I bet you can smell it right now. That distinct, sweet chemical aroma of fresh purple ink. When the teacher would walk down the aisle handing out the weekly quiz, what did every single student do? They put the paper to their face and took a deep breath. It was a collective aromatic high that every 60s student shared. Those papers were often still damp and cold to the touch. It's a sensory memory that no digital tablet will ever replace. Penny candy and the corner store. Back then, a quarter made you feel like a millionaire. You could walk into the corner store and come out with a brown paper bag overflowing with goodies. We're talking about wax lips, penny buttons on paper strips, Bazooka Joe bubblegum with the comic inside, and those wrong, colorful strips of licorice. You would spend 10 minutes carefully debating whether to get 2 Mary Janes or 1 atomic fireball. It was our first lesson in economics, and it tasted delicious. The TV rabbit ears and the aluminum foil. Television in the 60s was a team sport. If the picture started to roll or the ghosting became too much, someone, usually the youngest child, was designated as the human antenna. You'd stand there, one leg in the air, holding the rabbit ears at a 45-degree angle, while your dad shouted, "Don't move! That's it! Stay right there!" If that didn't work, out came the Reynolds wrap. We'd wrap clumps of aluminum foil on the tips of the antennae, hoping to catch a signal for the Sunday night movie. The Encyclopedia Britannica, the Google of the 60s. If you had a school report on the Great Wall of China, you didn't search for it, you went to the bookshelf. Having a full set of Encyclopedia Britannica was a status symbol. These were the gatekeepers of all human knowledge. We'd spend hours flipping through the pages, looking at the transparent overlays of the human body or the colorful maps of countries that don't even exist anymore. It made the world feel tangible and heavy. Playing army and cowboys and Indians. Our play was a reflection of the movies and TV shows we watched. We spent entire summer afternoons in the backyard with cap guns. Do you remember that smell? The sulfurous, smoky scent of a fresh roll of caps being hammered on the sidewalk? We played games with high stakes, usually involving dying in the most dramatic way possible after being shot by a friend. It was imaginative, physical, and completely unsupervised. Drive-in movies, the ultimate family night. There was nothing like the drive-in. You'd load the whole family into the car, sometimes even sneaking a cousin in the trunk to save a few cents. You'd hook that heavy, clunky metal speaker onto the window, which usually sounded like someone talking through a tin can, and settle in. The kids would stay in their pajamas, eventually falling asleep in the back seat while the parents watched a double feature. And the concession stand? That's where the real magic happened. The smell of popcorn and hot dogs wafting through the night air is a core memory for us all. The metal lunchbox, a cultural statement. Your lunchbox said everything about who you were. Were you a fan of the Monkees? Did you love G.I. Joe? Or were you a Disney kid? These weren't the soft, insulated bags kids have today. These were heavy-duty metal boxes that could double as a defensive weapon if a bully got too close. Inside, you'd find a thermos full of lukewarm milk or tomato soup and a sandwich wrapped in wax paper. If you had a Twinkie, you were the king of the cafeteria. High-heeled moms and fedora-wearing dads. People dressed differently in the 60s. You didn't go to the airport in sweatpants. If you were getting on a plane, you wore your Sunday best. Moms wore dresses and heels just to go to the supermarket, and dads wouldn't dream of leaving the house without a hat or a crisply ironed shirt. There was a sense of decorum and putting your best foot forward that defined the social fabric of the decade. The transition to color TV, a Technicolor revolution. If you were lucky enough to get a color TV in the mid-60s, you became the most popular house on the block. Neighbors would literally come over just to watch the NBC peacock fan its feathers. Seeing The Wizard of Oz in color for the first time on a home set was like magic. It felt like the world was finally waking up after decades of grayscale. We have to talk about the food. For some reason, the 1960s decided that everything tasted better if it was encased in gelatin. We had Jell-O with fruit, Jell-O with marshmallows, and God forbid, Jell-O with vegetables and tuna fish. No potluck was complete without a shimmering, quivering mold in the center of the table. It was the peak of modern cuisine.
The sound of the ice cream truck, that jingle. Whether it was the entertainer or turkey in the straw, that sound could trigger a Pavlovian response in any 60s child. You'd scream, "Mom, the ice cream man!" and pray she had a dime or a quarter in her purse. We'd race to the curb to get a bomb pop, a Nutty Buddy, or a creamsicle. It was the taste of summer. The Cold War shadows duck and cover. It wasn't all sunshine and lollipops. We grew up with a looming shadow. Do you remember the duck and cover drills? The sirens would wail, and we'd all crawl under our wooden desks, tucking our heads between our knees. Even as children, we knew the world was a dangerous place, but somehow we felt protected. It gave us a sense of resilience that stayed with us for life. The day the world stood still, the emotional finale. And finally, the memory that binds us all. It was July 20, 1969. Whether you were 5 or 15, you remember where you were. You sat on the floor, barely breathing, watching a grainy, ghostly white figure descend a ladder. When Neil Armstrong said those famous words, the world felt smaller and larger at once. For a brief moment, there was no war, no politics, no division, just humanity looking at the stars. We were the generation that saw the impossible become possible.
The outro and call to action. Growing up in the 1960s wasn't just about the things we had, it was about the way we felt. We were a generation caught between the traditions of our parents and the revolution of the future. We learned how to be bored, which made us creative. We learned how to fall, which made us tough. And we learned how to value community because we spent our lives out in it. YouTube coach tip, but I want to hear from you. Which of these 18 things made your heart skip a beat? Was it the smell of the Mimeograph paper or the sound of the Rotary phone? Drop your favorite 1960s memory in the comments below.